Hi, Cameron. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this, and thanks to the Western New York chapter of the ASMP for hosting. It's really great to be here. If you're watching this, then I'm actually in Florida where I'm digiteching on a shoot that didn't wrap in time for me to make the live webinar, and I offer my sincerest apologies for that. Cameron and I had the idea to pre-record my portion in case I wouldn't be able to make it live, and we did that last week and got some great conversation about my content and the why behind my website. But there was one problem, and that was that we talked for almost an hour, and that's about 50 minutes longer than my allotted time here. So I've made this video instead. If you would like to watch the full-length video, it's available on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Jebb Graff. That's JebbGraff. So this video right here, the one you're watching, hits on the main topics of our conversation, and let's just get to it. So Cameron asked me how I came to the current version of my website, and that is a wonderfully complex question, but to simplify it, I'll just say that the past versions of my website were primarily based on what I thought looked good and what I saw other photographers doing. I wanted to mimic the look of some of the bigger names in the industry, both because I looked up to their work and also because those sites were just really simple. You know, the images did the talking, the layout and design were really svelte and sexy, and that was great, but when I applied it to my website, I wasn't getting the calls I wanted. I had images from all of my commercial shoots in, a beautifully laid out grid, and I had a contact page, and, so what more could I possibly need? Pretty pictures, contact page. Well, apparently I needed a few things, starting with an understanding of what my target audience needed, which of course meant that I had to determine who my target audience even was. After doing that work, I came to realize that I needed a website that answered some simple questions. One, it needed to tell my market what I do. Two, it needed to tell my market how I could help them. And three, it needed to tell my market how they could get what I was offering. And the reality is that my prior simple, sexy website did none of that. Well, now I have a website that answers those questions, and it does so in a way that's not above the heads of the inexperienced art buyer, while still not being below the taste level of experienced ones. I don't have time to go through it page by page like we did last week. Again, check that YouTube if you want to see it. But I did want to hit the main points of the content that show that I have empathy for people and that I want to serve them. So right off the bat, my homepage greets the consumer with a warm and inviting portrait, but one that's kind of peculiar that further leads to the "what does this Jebb guy even do?" question. And so if they scroll down a bit, they get an answer. I make imagery that speaks your truth. What the heck does that even mean? Well, there's good news. I tell them in the first paragraph while calling some attention to certain lines using bolded copy, and then further explain with a short video. That video plays the double duty of being both an explainer video, but also introduces the consumer to my face and my demeanor. I follow that with a glowing testimonial from a client that helps paint the picture for the consumer that they're going to be happy when they've finished working with me. And while I'm painting that picture, what a perfect time then for this handy call to action. If all they do is visit my homepage, then they know what I do, they know how I can help them, and they know how they can get that help. And there's a bonus to having all this text on the homepage. This text is helping my search engine optimization, which means that I'm showing up in places that my clients are looking. I'm already about halfway through my time, so I wanted to jump over to my portfolio menu and talk about these case studies. Case studies, and specifically the way I've included use cases and behind the scenes, answer the question of, cool, you take pictures, but what do I do with them? What's a shoot like? The galleries on these pages are just a sample of the full library of deliverables, which I call out in the text. So it lets them know, you can get more than what you see here, but they're enough to tell the story and show my capabilities. Then I include examples of the images in use, whether that be a screenshot, tear sheet, or social media post, as well as any behind the scenes images that I may have. And side note, this is a reminder to follow your clients on social media so you can stay engaged, of course, but also so you can see your work being used, because who doesn't like that? So I want to point out that every single one of my portfolio pages follows a format of strong hero image at the top, then explainer text, then the gallery. This format's consistent throughout my site and serves the purpose of being predictable for the consumer, which, helps usability. They feel that they trust, they know what's going to happen next. Most photographers didn't get into photography to be writers, but what this text does at the top of the page is it lets people know that I understand what they need, even if they don't completely understand what they need. And it takes the mystery out of what I do and what these pictures are about. I have a full about section, which includes a bio to get to know me more personally, in addition to my experience. When possible, I link my client list back to case studies. That way, it gives the consumer an idea of what I did for these clients instead of just naming them. Possibly my favorite part of my About section is the FAQ page. This page is really important and serves multiple functions. One, it does what it says and answers some common questions people have. I've also included some images in the FAQs to kind of further paint the picture of what you get when you work with me and to make things more clear when possible. Two, it's a good place to anticipate questions that will come up. I use it to set boundaries about licensing, copyright, etc., in the mix of the questions they have. And three, SEO. Google likes an FAQ page. If my bio is the who, then my philosophy is the why, and lets people know why I do the work I do. This is more and more important as people seek to work with businesses and people that they align with in both values and mission. So they can take a look at my philosophy, see what I'm about, see who I am, and decide for themselves whether, we're a good fit. All right, jumping over to the services menu. Now, this one seems obvious, but this is the first time in a very long time that I've listed my services on my website. I used to think it made me look a little too retail, a little too much like a commodity photographer. But when I thought about it, I thought, can you imagine walking into some place and smelling wonderful food and having no idea whether or not you could even buy the food, or if you knew you could buy it, you didn't know what it was made of, you didn't know what the options were, or even how to buy it? Apply that scenario to a photographer's website, and it was mine. So I added services that clearly explain what they are, what problem they solve for you, and how to get them. And yes, there is a button on every service, because when you're shopping for something you want as little friction as possible. No hunting for how to buy it, no feeling lost. Want to inquire about commercial portraiture? Easy. Click on the commercial portraiture button. So this brings us to the What I Do page. And more specifically, what I do, how I do it, and what you get. This page serves the consumer by answering those questions with information about the process of working with me, as well as what you get beyond the deliverable. Things like insurance, safe sets, tethered shooting, etc., and then some add-on options that informed inexperienced art buyers about how all this works, but reassures experienced art buyers that I'm comfortable and capable on set. Before I get to the contact page, I want to point out that the bottom of every page on my website includes a call to action that leads to my contact page. Calls to action are important in general for answering the how do I get it questions, but also help when someone lands on your site from somewhere other than the home page. When you're shopping in a big store, you don't want to walk all the way up to the cashier to get help. You find the nearest associate, and in this case, there's an associate on every page by way of the call to action. And here we are, the contact page. This one I kept very simple because it deserves to be. How many times have you clicked on a contact page only to be told to look at the FAQs? That's friction. So this page is about ease. First, I led with the only 2 social media networks I'm active on. I'm on others, but these are the best ones to reach me. Then my phone number, and then my email address. Then onto a form with plenty of questions that does 2 things again. It weeds out the folks who aren't looking for what I offer. And for those who are looking for what I offer, it asks them questions that get them thinking intentionally about their imagery needs. It changes I need pictures to I need pictures for my website and some print ads next month, and I have this amount of budget. Can you help me with that? Then I send them a link to book a discovery call at a time that's convenient for them, and we talk. Out of time here, I'll wrap up with my last page, which is a blog. My blog acts in support of my brand in that it includes more than my photography. I share the podcast I produce, creative writing, music, personal work, etc. All of these things are there to give the consumer insight into my personality and values, but also help establish me as someone who can help them think holistically about their creative projects. It helps deliver the message that I'm not a button-pushing laborer, but more of a creative resource on their team and can guide them, to help achieve their goals. All right, time's up. Once again, thanks to Cameron and the other panelists, as well as the ASMP Western New York chapter for having me. And thank you for listening. Also, if you're interested, remember that the full conversation Cameron and I had is at youtube.com/Jebb Graff.